Finally, the ending of child labour and the beginning of compulsory education for children were monumental events in Victorian Britain. Today, a blue plaque went up on a building just outside Cambridge to commemorate someone whose hard life and early death helped bring about both. He was only 11, the youngest person to have one of the plaques. George Brewster was a chimney sweep.
They're often portrayed as happy-go-lucky. Mary Poppins responsible for this romantic view of the chimney sweep. But behind the real smog-filled skies of England's cities was the dark reality of climbing boys, or children forced to clean chimneys.
That wasn't an unusual story for children in the Victorian era. Lots of children were either, down mines, up chimneys, in factories, working on farms, and in fact 40% of the workforce of that time was under 18.
His name may be on a blue plaque now, but in 1875 George Brewster was an unremarkable 11-year-old. Owned by a chimney sweep master, he had to clamber up flues for his keep. George was forced by his master to climb and clean a chimney of a boiler house that once stood in front of this building. But 15 minutes into his climb, he got stuck. They did pull a wall down as they tried to rescue him, and they did get him out, but he died shortly after. George was to be Britain's last climbing boy. For decades, MP and social reformer, the 7th Earl of Shaftesbury, had been campaigning to ban the practice. Then, just 7 months after George's death, he was finally successful.
He used the real-life stories, brought that to the House of Commons and the Lords, and made the sort of seriousness of that story come to life. And it was obviously that was the last moment, if you like, where people finally said, right, no, we've really got to change this.
5 years later, school then became compulsory for all children, saving thousands of lives.
Time for the big unveiling.
Now exactly 150 years on from his death, George has become the youngest person to be commemorated with a blue plaque, and it's already inspiring other young Georges.
When I read about him, I instantly thought, I want to change the world like he did.
George Brewster, the ordinary boy with an extraordinary legacy. Charlie Frost, News at 10.
Now, we're going to tell you a story about an historic tragedy that led to huge social change. It's about a boy called George Brewster who died 150 years ago while sweeping a chimney in Cambridgeshire.
George's death was a turning point, prompting a debate in Parliament and eventually a change in child labour laws that saved thousands of lives. And now a blue plaque to honour George has been unveiled, as Tim Muffet reports.
It was a dark, dirty, dangerous job.
The boys that they used to send up chimneys were called climbing boys. Sadly, in 1875, in a chimney in this building, an 11-year-old boy died. His name was George Brewster, and we should all know his name.
Joanna Hudson describes herself as an amateur historian. 6 years ago, she became fascinated by one tragic event and what happened as a result.
This is not an unusual story for Victorian England. Lots of children perished in terrible circumstances, but this boy's story was different. And his story made it into the local newspapers and then into the national newspapers. It was the catalyst for change, not only the child labour laws for chimney sweeping children, but within a few years, all industries, and then within just 5 years, they pushed for compulsory education for all children. Discovering George's story has been lovely, but also, quite sad.
Joanna has come to the site of George Brewster's death in Fulbourn in Cambridgeshire.
So this used to be a pauper lunatic asylum, so they would, people would come here with mental health struggles.
There are no pictures of George Brewster. His life was short and unremarkable. His death, which happened because he got stuck in a very narrow chimney, was a turning point.
Thankfully for me, it's no longer there, but most of the building still survives, which is amazing.
Time for the big unveiling.
Joanna has led the campaign for a blue plaque in George Brewster's honour.
He will actually be the youngest person ever to have received an official blue plaque. Because if you think about it, most people get blue plaques for most amazing things they've done in life. And George sadly died at 11 and he wasn't able to do anything amazing in life, but his legacy will be amazing.
It was the 7th Earl of Shaftesbury who read about George Brewster's death and considered it the final straw in his long campaign to ban child chimney sweeps. He managed to get an act passed by Parliament shortly after.
Nicholas, explain to us how you are related to the man who had such an impact on child labour laws.
The 7th Earl of Shaftesbury was my great-great-great-grandfather, and he was a huge social reformer during the Victorian period. The use of young children up chimneys to clean them was a cause that he was particularly passionate about and campaigned for many years to try and bring it to an end. George Brewster represents all of those children that died before him, that were treated in such cruel ways.
George, Hattie and Harrison have been learning about George Brewster's remarkable legacy.
How does it feel to hear about his story?
Sort of strange, because right now we learn stuff in classrooms and we don't go up chimneys because of George Brewster.
He all gave us the opportunity to go to school, so I guess we should be thankful.
Lawson White is the chairman of the Guild of Master Chimney Sweeps, which promotes best practice today.
Every chimney sweep will have considered the plight of climbing boys when they're working on a chimney.
What has it been like learning about the life of George Brewster?
I've worked in Cambridgeshire for over 25 years, and some of the chimneys that I work on, very likely he did too. So that really brought it home to me.
The names of most of the children who died doing this terrible job are long forgotten. But thanks in part to this blue plaque, George Brewster's name will now be remembered by many more generations to come. Tim Muffet, BBC News.
The little boy who changed the law.
Yeah.
So sad. Yeah.
Seeing the years of his life so short as well. I didn't know about George's story at all.
No, it's incredible.